call to order.
Mr. Bugler.
Yes.
Mr. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Tucker.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes. A moment of silence. Thank you. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Gonzalez, is there any changes or additions to the agenda?
No, there is not.
Thank you. Any board members have any changes or additions? Okay. Approval of agenda as presented.
Mr. Mansfield.
Yeah.
Wait, we need a motion.
Oh,
Need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Mr. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Bugler.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes. Certification of matters discussed in closed session. Need a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that, I'd like to certify that personnel matters discussed in closed session pertain to section 2.2-3711A1.
Second. You can have it.
Thank you.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Bugler.
Yes.
Mr. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes. Any person submitted anything for
No.
no comment? Any persons outside for the input on the superintendent search? Nobody here for that. Okay. Approval of March 2021 minutes. Need a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from March 2021.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for March.
Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Mr. Bugler.
Yes.
Mr. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Brady.
Yes. The next item is information. Superintendent search update. Take one and pass it around. These are interview questions for the panels. And each one has the category above it. And then it has a subcategory underneath of it. So beside each bullet, just decide if you want it to be a staff panel. So just put an S. Let me take this. Put an S for staff panel. If you want it to be for the community, put a C for community. And if you want it as a board question, put it as a B. If you do each question, then when we come back together on May 5th, next week, we'll pick out which
You mean
ones we'll actually ask. So
You mean Monday, May 3rd?
May 3rd, I'm sorry. May 5th is Wednesday. Thank you, Dr. Painter.
So one question on that. Do we know, when are we going to come out with the format of the, I know we're doing the questions right now.
What do you mean by format?
It's format as far as how the interview process is going to go with different groups.
Well, the panels will all be seated with a candidate who come in the panel will ask their question. Everybody will give a packet.
Okay.
They'll have a question on there with white space for them to take notes and then a rating scale at the bottom. So each question that each panelist who serve will then rate the question as it pertains to what they heard and understood, and then whatever notes. Then we'll tally the scores. They'll give it back to a board member that's at the meeting. We'll tally them up, and then if we need to review whatever their comments were, and they'll have some time after the end, after the candidate leaves, to kind of converse back and forth and to make whatever notes on whatever questions they want to. But the board needs to decide how many questions each panel will ask. It doesn't have to be the same, so the staff one can be 12, 15, the community one can be 15, 18, it's whatever number that you have. But keep in mind that the interview process will only be about an hour and a half, and part of that interview time would be the candidate telling the panelists a little bit about themselves.
Okay. So there's not going to be any, will there be time for follow-up questions?
Only as it pertains to the question that they give.
Okay.
So someone will read the question. If a candidate answers a question that needs clarification, then they can ask a clarifying question
Okay.
to get more details about that particular answer. But asking another question that is not on there, no, because then you won't have a way to score it in a way that you can ask the next set of candidates to come through. So it has to be fair question for all candidates to answer.
And these questions came from our surveys.
No, these questions are standard HR questions that I've gotten. So the survey questions, most of them are sort of covered in that, unless you want to specifically say in Page County or whatever. So if you want them to say that per se, then you'll probably need to add that in wherever you want it to say Page County Public Schools. But the assumption is there, it's the Page County Public Schools.
So where'd you get these? Because I kind of feel like you just did it all.
Yeah, from an HR director that works for a company out of Harrisonburg that's a national and international company. She shared them with me. And then I've had to go in and sort of tweak them a little bit for the school system because it, was definitely directed towards their company. But they are pretty standard HR questions, generalized HR questions. And they're underneath different categories. And then in those categories, it talks about the subcategories and those questions that get to that. So that will give you a way to get a well-rounded picture of a candidate.
All right. So I just have some concerns that is it really going to, I know there was times when we looked at some of the survey questions and we, pared them down. And we said, hey, there are some extra ones here, really good questions. They're not going to make the survey, but we might ask them during the interview session.
Right, and that it's still there. These are
Okay.
just extra questions. It's not the only questions that we have. So you still have from last week, all of those printouts from the two surveys.
Okay. All right. So I was taking, okay, I'm glad
Yeah,
you
because
said
it sounds like we're trying to get a store manager for Lowe's.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Where'd you get it?
No, these are just other questions. So we do have those questions from the survey,
Okay.
and we have these.
Okay. So we can, on the survey questions, this other set, you
Yes,
still need to put
The C.
staff, C, and B.
yeah, the C, S, and B.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Yep,
And we'll
and
decide this next Monday night.
next Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you should have that printout that I gave you last week, two weeks ago, in that folder that I gave you.
I'm glad you clarified because I was understanding.
Yeah, I
this
was
the new
thinking
set,
this
and I'm
was
thinking,
our.
No, my apologies. No,
Very good.
because you have the community and you have the staff questions, but they somewhat overlap.
I'm probably sure.
But yeah, I didn't retype those up into these because they were already done in a different category. And those are more very specific to who we are.
All
So
right, perfect. Yeah, it'll be changed.
Thank you.
See, I don't see the other ones,
it's in that one right there.
but they're all the ones off the survey.
That's what's
Right.
on the survey.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
Yep.
community and the staff.
Yeah. You should have two packets that's like that. One that's from the staff and should say it at the top, and one from the community. Any other questions on that item? Okay. All right. Unfinished learning updates, Mr. Benson.
Good evening, members of the board. Tonight I passed out a document that has color on the front and is titled Unfinished Learning. Believe it or not, we have just, I think, right around 20 days left of this school year, so we thought it would be a nice opportunity to come back and talk a little bit about where we're at in terms of unfinished learning. The first portion of this document looks at we have been continuing to monitor the return of students coming back to school. I found it kind of ironic this morning. I was watching the morning news, and I think Harrisonburg City announced that they were going back for in-person learning today to begin. And that's something that we've been doing quite a while here in Page County. I'm happy to report that both Springfield Elementary School and Luray Elementary School are right at the top with 89% of students. Their school population both have 89% of students coming to school for in-person learning. And all 4 elementary schools are above 80% right now. The middle schools both sit at 77 and 79. Luray Middle School is 77% of students are attending for in-person, and Page County Middle School is 79%. And then I think what we would expect is our high schools are the lowest, and they're sitting just right at 60 and 62%. Luray High School is 60%, and Page County High School is 62%. So it's been harder to get those students back for that. But we're happy with what's going on in terms of students coming back to school. And it's been, I think that has played a big role in the next portion of this data. And that is we continue to monitor the grades and some of the coursework that's going on. You can see here, we've been looking at, and I think we've been sharing this data right along, that we've been looking at students that have 1 F, 2 Fs, or 3 or more Fs. That first chart is the 1F, and when we ran this data from the last time, we saw 6 decreases and just 2 increases. So I would say that we're headed in the right direction.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
The one for Page County High School, why is that one continuously looking that their Fs are going up?
So I think what you're seeing there, Mr. Breeden, is they're going down in the 3 or more Fs category.
But they're retaining 1.
Right, but they're retaining one. Okay, so as those numbers go down in some of the other categories, I think if you see that, if you flip through, you see that there's been a little rise though in the 1F category.
So they may get something in 1 or 2 classes and get that up to A or B or C.
Exactly.
Still struggling in one, at this point, in 1 class.
Exactly, and I think that's really important. If you just flip right to the 3 or more F section, you see that there's been 7 decreases. 7 of the schools, there was just 1 increase there. And so that's, from the larger, if you stand back and look at the data, we're headed in the right direction. Hopefully, we're going to still continue to take advantage of the 19 or 20 days that are left that we have in person, and hopefully we can still improve upon these numbers. But we are, as you continue to move forward, you see that we've been holding our special advisory recovery committee meetings. And I think the first thing you see in each of those different groups is the fact that we are planning for some sort of summer program at all 3 levels. Okay, so we are hoping to address some of the unfinished learning that has occurred with students. And then I took the time to kind of break that out and just talk a little bit about some of the other things that are going on. When Mr. Breeden suggested the recovery committee meetings at the beginning of the school year to kind of tackle the unfinished learning that had occurred, I think there was a lot of multifaceted things going on that went along with that. So not only was it planning a summer program for that, but also beginning to think about what is next year going to look like. Okay, so you start to see some of that at each of the different levels. At the elementary level, we're talking about an intervention block. And we're also talking about trying to do some things cross-curricular. And so when we tackle standards, trying to begin to tie things together. We know that we have to continue to think about social and emotional needs of our students, the trauma that has occurred that from this pandemic. So that's been a portion of all 3 levels. A big role or a big thing that we've been talking about here recently is, Page County has going to receive some extra additional dollars from the pandemic, and what to do with those and how to use those dollars best to tackle the learning the unfinished learning that has occurred. Specialists are something that we are looking at, and we've been working with Dr. Gonzalez and HR to try to think about some maybe some retired teachers that might be interested in coming back and helping us out and making it to their advantage. Also, as more students come back, particularly at the elementary level, we need to be prepared to have enough staff available for those increases. So we're getting a pretty good idea that there was a position or two that we're going to need to add back in from what we were thinking. The VDOE has been a resource for us here recently. Last year they distributed a document, the big book we called it. It was the 3R book. This year they've come out with what they call Virginia Learns, and we've been participating in some of the webinars to better understand the recommendations from the Virginia Department of Education as to how to tackle the unfinished learning. And then there's also been some work specifically related to mathematics and looking at those pathways. The building administration and central office staff have continued to participate in professional development, specifically related to next year and to some of the software and different programs that we're looking at for next year. And then so that kind of ties right in line with the next thing. Just looking at different programs. I think it's fair to say that for some time we weren't able to look at everything on the table because we just didn't have the funds to do so. And now we are exploring some of those programs that in past years maybe we thought we couldn't afford as a way to possibly target and help our students. At the middle school level, the summer school program does look a little bit different. And you'll see that mirrors the high school level. So 3 sessions, you'll see some dates and times there. And so we've been working to put those staff in place so we're able to hold that. The master schedule development at the middle school level also looks different. We've been able to work in a 40-minute RTI block into next year's bell schedule. And we do plan on rotating kids in and out for either targeted ELA or math needs through that time. So after about 20 or 25 days, working through some remediation interventions, we're going to take a look and see where kids are at and move them around a little bit. So that's going to be part of our schedule. One thing that I also wanted to just highlight for the middle school level is as we've been able to put more devices in students' hands, specifically some of the Chromebooks and things, the need for computer labs, big computer labs where you would take your entire class to the computer lab are no longer necessarily a necessity. So we've begun to already look at repurposing some of those spaces and trying to gain some additional instructional space. I think Dr. Lane's been pretty clear that there's been money given to Page County to try and expand our learning spaces. I don't know if that makes sense. I think we've agreed as a cabinet that's been difficult. When you're talking about new construction or to rent modular units to bring in classrooms, you're talking about pretty substantial projects. So another way that we've been beginning to think about it is if we can capture other spaces, computer labs, as we kind of take those labs down and then repurpose those rooms to do that. So that's already specifically been going on at the middle school level. And then the back is the high school. And you see some notes there. The next year's master schedule is going to look a little bit different. They're planning on our what we would call our traditional 4x4 block schedule, going back to a semester schedule that will actually be 5 blocks. And so there'll be some additional time to target. Again, you'll see that down below. There's a skills class that we're planning on putting in for 9th and 10th graders for specifically to target ELA and math again. And then, again, looking to meet the social-emotional piece for them as well. The high school schedule has the seminar period and what specifically curriculum we'll look at to make sure that we're tackling that then and there.
Mr. Benson, I have a
Sure.
quick question. On the master schedule, that's going to play well now with the VOTEC Center?
That will be fine, yes, sir. Yep. And it will, because as you see there, the 9th and 10th graders traditionally don't go to the VOTEC Center. Those programs have been reserved for juniors and seniors. So we'll be doing some other things there, so we should be okay. So I think there's a lot of different facets going on when you're talking about unfinished learning. Like I said, not only the monitoring of students coming back to our buildings for in-person instruction, not only the monitoring of grades, but some of the other different sub-bullets that have come out of some of the breakout meetings. Be happy to answer any questions.
On the summer program, what are the plans, and you may not have them all in place yet, for making all this information known to parents? So they'll be crystal clear with what programs are available in the
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah. So I would say at the secondary level, some of that discussion has already been occurring. Our schools, I think we've done a very good job reaching out to individual families and students and saying there's concern. This is what you're kind of looking at already. As those dates were available, we've been able to say to students, or parents, here's what you're looking at. Here's the amount of time that you would need to be. And believe it or not, as we would expect, our students have stepped up. We have situations. Ms. Clark mentioned this to me last week, where a student has been checking in daily with her. Ms. Clark, have you checked my grades? Have you seen where I'm at here? And I think we've caught the attention of some of our students through some of those conversations. So we will continue to do that.
And with our seniors for this year that were in jeopardy, would it be safe to say that the majority are going to be okay?
We're getting there.
Okay,
There's work to be done.
okay.
And I would say it's a monumental task to think that everybody that was slated for graduation is going to be ready.
Well, I know they've been contacted.
Yes,
and
they
so
have.
it's not that
Yep.
they don't know, so it's up to,
I would say at this point, it's fair to say that the ball's in their court.
gotcha.
If students decide to step up and do what they need to do, we're going to be prepared to hand them the diploma. We're not going to give it away.
I understand
I think
that.
we're going to have to draw the line there and say, this is our expectation.
Yep.
There were some handouts, I think, last year with what happened given the pandemic, and students didn't have to test, and we kind of just ended the school year and we were able to carry over those grades. That's not the case, and we tried to make families aware of that. That's not the deal this year.
And
That's a great question she asked, and I'm glad you're. But just help me with summer school. I looked at this graph. Just say 3 and 2 Fs.
Mhm.
And if I added Page County High School or Lurais, the 3 Fs, there's like 40 couple students, or 40 couple of students like that, and then 60. So would that mean that 100 folks would be going to summer school if it ended today?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. Because I would say to you that there were, now some of these courses are things that we're not going to be able to offer during the summer that they're failing. Okay. So there's going to be some times where unfortunately, we don't have things set up. So I think your number's a little high just simply because we're not going to be able to offer everything that we would do during the school year as part of our summer program. But for the core academic classes, we are hoping to be able to remediate and get those students where they need to be so that those become a passing grade.
And if you could be patient with me, I just want to walk through the summer school, just so
Sure.
parents know, right? So is a summer school day like a full work day?
A summer school day is a Monday through Thursday,
Okay,
8 to 1.
8 to 1,
It's a 5-hour day.
okay,
And we've broken those times into basically 3 different chunks of time. There's some time in there where we will have some, we're going to feed students breakfast and lunch. It can't just be, I'm going to sit down and work for 5 hours.
Right.
I think
Understand
it's
that.
fair to say.
Yeah.
So there'll be some stretch breaks, some social things that'll happen, and then we'll try to move on to something else.
and when there's some classes that will not be offered,
Correct.
say a student only has to attend so many classes that day, is there going to be buses running all the time?
There isn't. The transportation is standard, so we were
Okay.
going to hope to have students there at, for the 8 a.m. start. We'll have
Okay.
some community drop points where we'll ask students to get to,
Okay,
and then there'll be a bus that runs in the afternoon. So, like I said to you, Mr. Painter, there were 3 different chunks of time that we've divided that up into. And I'll use your example. Let's say I've only needed 2 of those chunks of time.
Right.
If a student stays, we're going to use that 3rd chunk of time to do some additional remediation in one of the other 2 classes.
okay,
So it's taking advantage of some of the software that we are going to be piloting or have been using. So let's just say I struggled in English 9. Okay, that was one of the classes that I didn't do well in. And another course, let's just say Algebra 1. And then I'm there for the full time. I have that 3rd block of time. we're going to spend some of that time with the student working through the Lexia software to rebuild and to remediate some of that inner English that they needed.
Okay.
So they'll actually double up on some of the core things.
Well, I'm trying to motivate students who have, like, say, 1F. Get your work, everybody should get their work done. But motivation's difficult right now. I mean, it's springtime, right? And I know down at the center, they're always asking, why can't I do it next week? Well, you need to do it this week, right? So those ones that has 1F, they need to get their work done. That way they can have their summers off.
Exactly.
They're going to be
We're
there. from
trying to
8
develop that sense of urgency that you're talking about, those phone calls. I've seen conferences with students where administrators kind of pass the paper across the desk and say, okay, Mr. Painter, this is where you're at. Which session of summer school would you like to sign up? And we've had students say, I don't want to come to summer school, but here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And that has created some sense of urgency there. Again, communicating with parents. We've put it out there. There's some time left. There's still hope. But you're right. The window is closing and the weather is getting better.
So is there an August graduation date set?
We have not set that yet. We're kind of waiting to see where we're going to need. That's something that we've always done kind of last minute. We put forth a summer graduation if we need that to be.
And these summer school courses are repeat courses. There's no new course.
That's correct. Yes,
It's
ma'am.
repeat.
There's no acceleration.
Gotcha.
And the parent, so if I have my child has 2 Fs and has to go to summer school, and I decide I do not want my child to go to summer school, is that even an option?
Well, they'll be repeating the
They'll
class.
be repeating the
Yeah.
year, right?
That impacts or if they're high schoolers, they'll repeat those 2 classes.
Right.
And we know our schedule's set up where there's some additional time in the block schedule, in the 4x4 block, but I would say be careful.
I have a question. I see that for elementary, you're doing a summer bridge. It's K2. What happens to the 3-5?
We haven't had that, we don't have that plan concrete yet here tonight, Mr. Breeden, so I couldn't put that down on this program. Those are discussions that are still happening.
Okay.
I'll just say to you, after speaking with Mr. Hopkins and listening to some of the work at the elementary level, our greatest losses have occurred in K2. And our data says that. And so they felt it was really important to make sure to cement something for our K2 students. So they've really tried to make sure they have the staffing program in place for those 3 grade levels. And then we'll begin to think about 3 through 5.
Okay. And if catch-up isn't a problem for 3 through 5, is it being looked at that it could be an enrichment program for 3 through 5?
I should have put that on the list. And Mr. Hopkins and I talked about that specifically today. We are still planning a K-5 enrichment program for all students. That is still on the table. So we don't necessarily have something for 3 through 5 planned right down in great detail yet to address unfinished learning, but summer enrichment will be available for K through 5.
Okay.
We have staff lined up to be able to offer that.
Thank you.
Sounds pretty solid to me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Benton.
Okay, thank you.
School board meeting schedule, Dr. Painter.
Yes. Most of you all know, but beginning July 1st, I won't be a principal anymore. I'll be the director of federal programs for Rockingham County. And part of that new job requires me to also attend their school board meetings, which is on the exact same schedule as ours. So I know in January is when we set our scheduled meetings, and we're currently the 2nd and 4th Mondays. And I wanted to see if anyone would entertain if we could move to the 1st and 3rd. How your feelings were on that.
When would this move take place?
July 1st.
And for July through the rest of the year?
And what Mondays or what days, the 1st or?
First and third.
The
First or
1st.
third.
Or would you want to switch to doing the Tuesday with staying the 2nd and 4th?
Board supervisor
Unfortunately,
meetings
starting in
Tuesday.
the fall, I'll be teaching at JMU every Tuesday
Okay.
evening.
And what did you say, Jeff?
I was going to say, board supervisors meet on the 2nd and 4th.
Oh, so you want to avoid that. Okay.
The 1st or 3rd, no problem for me.
Same here.
I have no problem.
Would you like for someone to make a motion?
Information.
What, it's just
Well,
information.
Good information.
Yeah, we'll make a motion, I'll ask the question.
But you don't have to do it today. We can add it on for next time.
Does that mess up anything like with finance or reporting from instruction or any
change-
other departments?
Does it change anything for you?
End of fiscal year though, maybe, right?
It would impact our check runs, because currently they run with your all's meetings, so we could either retroactively approve the check runs, I mean, you'd still get all of the same information, or we would have to move our check runs to the first and the third, which affects, kind of our billing cycles.
And how much of trouble is that?
I'm not sure, because I haven't really looked into it, I didn't, I'm not knowing what we were
Okay.
gonna be discussing, so.
Can she take time to look and then we can put it on the agenda for next time to vote? Because we still have time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I've known, but I wanted to make sure it was approved by their school board
Yeah.
first. So I was like,
That's understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you have to check out, then let us know.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so see what that hardship
because I
may
think they
be.
used to be on a different schedule.
Yeah, see what that does for you starting in July.
Okay.
And if another month is easier for you to switch, then, we can retroactive or anything for a little bit of time. So just see what works.
Unless, of course, y'all want to get rid of me.
Well, that's an option.
Please.
We'll make it that easy for you.
Well, congratulations on your
Yeah.
You'll be good at that.
Very good. We'll see.
When you're very good with details, and that's a very detail-oriented job.
That's great news, Dr. Painter.
Yes.
Any other comments on that? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Painter. Informational calendar for Mr. Benson.
Good evening, board members. Once again, we are continuing to look at the 2021-22 school year calendar. At our last meeting, I believe everybody received some feedback from one concerned citizen, and that prompted us to go back and kind of take a look at things. So tonight is, again, an informational item to try and bring everybody back up to speed at where we're kind of at. When we originally proposed the calendar this year, we scheduled 180 days. The SOQ requires 180 days or 900 days. Based upon the feedback that we received, we took a look at what exactly we could count in terms of instructional time. And so you see our original calendar there had 165 in-person days. And that alone gives you the 990 hours based upon the amount of time that students go to school in Page County. But we were looking for some continuity of learning to take place. And so we thought on those days that we had traditionally scheduled for professional development or teacher workday once a month, that we were going to just make those remote learning days. And we've gotten some feedback on that. And I think we were trying to go above the bar. Is that fair to say, Dr. T? And, we've tried to come back to, okay, let's look at what the time is and let's look at what the recommendation is. So if you look at the 165 days, we had 8/remote/review days, and then we had the 7 early releases. Again, the 165 days at 6 hours a day gives you the 990 hours. We know that the remote learning time, when that's done asynchronously, the way we do it here in Page County, we cannot count that, but we do get some time from the 7 early releases. So what I'm saying here to you this evening is, if you were to go 172 days, you still have the 990 hours that you are required. That's first and foremost. Secondly, the standards of quality say at specific levels, there's some requirements. I believe Mr. Breeden prompted this question, and we just wanted to make sure this was out there for everybody to show and demonstrate that we do meet the requirements at each of the specific levels. So at the elementary level, you have to go 680 hours in the 4 core academic areas, and I kind of showed you how we do that. At the middle school, we need 560 hours. I'm trying to show you how we do that. We are at 708 hours, so to speak, when we need 560. Where we fall a little bit short is the high school. Okay, and I wanted to be transparent on that. But Page County is allowed and does typically, historically, has applied for the waiver. There is a waiver that's available here, and you can follow through the bullet checklist that basically says, although we don't hit the 140-hour mark, okay, we are providing the same level of content and rigor that would be expected if students did go 140 hours. So we fall a little bit short there, but that doesn't mean we've lowered the bar, I guess is what I'm saying.
And it doesn't, Page County is not unique to itself that takes this waiver. There's lots of schools
Many
that do
schools
that.
do.
Exactly, yes, Coach.
I just want that clear. So
Yes.
Page County is not unique.
Yes.
It's many schools, high schools in the state that do this. So
Exactly. So going forward and trying to make a recommendation to you here this evening, Dr. Gonzalez suggested that we go back and it's a good suggestion to go back and look at some of the original calendar survey feedback that we received, just to make sure. We had one person that stepped up and gave us some feedback, but there were others that had some ideas as to what's going on here with next year's calendar. So I just wanted to remind people that we had 63 other people that we received feedback from. That data did indicate a preference for 5-day in-person. This calendar says that we are going to do that. That data did say for some folks that remote learning days were not manageable. That typically came from community members. And we did have some staff say it's more work for us when we have remote learning days. So I think that we should at least acknowledge that. We are paying very close attention to Senate Bill 1303. And I don't know how to say this, but there is information coming out daily regarding this bill. Okay, when we reached out to the VDOE, they were a little taken back to say, wait a second, this was just signed into action a couple of weeks ago. There's a superintendent's memo coming because you're not the only school division calling us. And I would say, in speaking with Dr. Gonzalez, sometimes information that's relayed in Dr. Lane's meetings with division superintendents is a little bit different than what we see on the Virginia legislator website too. So we're getting clarification on all of these different things. The fact of the matter is this. The bill does say that you must offer in-person instruction for at least 180 days or 990 hours, and Page County has a plan. So I would say to you, for that first bullet, we meet the mark. Okay, we're doing that with our proposed calendar. The second thing says you should be prepared for fluctuations in the number of students requesting in-person. Okay, and I would go back to you and say, that goes back to the unfinished learning document. Okay, that's why I put there staff allocations. That's what we're trying to be prepared for. Okay, so I would say again, based upon the work we're doing as part of our unfinished learning, Page County meets the mark. Full or part-time virtual programs may be offered at the discretion of the division. And right now, Page County is exploring what programs those would be. Okay, we've heard from a couple of different people already. Virtual Virginia is one, Edgenuity is another, and we're trying to explore and think about what programs would be the best fit for Page County students.
But as a point of clarity, those virtual programs are those related to people's concerns of attending school in person due to COVID.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you for that. So again, I go back to that fourth bullet. Divisions that want to include remote, synchronous or asynchronous, the most prudent course of action is to do so beyond the mandated. And that's what we were trying to do. Those were those remote days. Okay? So I would say to you, we were following the mark there. Weather. So if you're going to go off of time, you have to always be concerned about weather. Okay? And there is additional legislation, I've listed it there, that talks about you can go to school virtually and it will count. So although you saw at the top of this document, the remote days don't count towards your time, there is separate legislation that says if you have inclement weather and you hold school synchronously or asynchronously in a remote fashion for 10 days, you can do that. You are still covered. Does that make sense? Okay. So that all leads to actually two different recommendations, one for this year and one for next year. The cabinet has met and talked. Our recommendation is that we go 172 days in person, which would gain us the 990 hours that we need. And that we would just make take the remote days out of the calendar and that were scheduled for professional development and teacher work days, and those would just be off days. Similar to what we did, I guess now 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay?
Off days for students.
Off
Yes.
days for the students.
Yep.
Okay? And exactly, Mr. Green, so that our staff could focus on the professional development and other activities that we're. So that's one recommendation that I wanted to present here this evening. The second recommendation is when we discussed this year's calendar and we were thinking about COVID, you remember we were on an Group A and Group B schedule. And we didn't know where we would be at the end of this year. Let's just be honest. And because we've been able to get so many students back, we don't really have Group A or Group B, specifically at the elementary or the middle school level anymore, because we have students coming back 4 days a week. And we really do have all of the end of the year requirements that are still in place. So a recommendation for you to consider here this evening is, because we've gotten to the place we've been able to achieve, to possibly consider 2 early release days like we historically have done in this year's calendar to give teachers some time to be able to close out the end of the year. So we would suggest May 27th and 28th for that. At the high school level, we will be doing SOL testing at those days. And really what we will be doing at that time is doing makeups. We will be testing kids that we weren't able to get, or doing some of the expedites that we were going to require. So I don't think it's as big of an issue for the high school student. And if you think about the elementary school students and the middle school students, I think the hesitation to put that in the calendar before is because the last 2 days, Group A would have had Monday and Tuesday as their last 2 days.
Yeah.
And Group B would have had Thursday and Friday. But now that we've been able to combine the groups and bring everybody, the last day for those students is the Thursday and Friday.
So make sure I understand, on May 27th and 28th, high school would be in session.
High school is going to be in session.
With SOL testing, makeups, or whatever
Yes,
needing to
ma'am.
be done.
Yep.
But it would still be an early release.
It would still be an early
It'd be
release.
across the board.
And that doesn't affect, right, and that does not, we still can get SOL testing in if we do an early release.
Because you have fewer numbers
Yeah.
testing on those dates.
Yeah.
It's like I said, makeup and experts.
Okay, so you've got recommendations, but this is underneath information. Are you
Right.
looking to move it to approval?
We will do whatever you just feel is best to
Do it
do.
at the next
What's the
meeting.
board's pleasure? Do you want to move the calendar to action tonight, or do you want to wait till the next meeting, regular scheduled school board meeting, and do it as an action item day? What's your pleasure?
If we wait, then it gives the public a chance to digest this and potentially give us feedback.
We can update the calendars to reflect the removal of those remote days if that's the pleasure of the board. If you're going to take our recommendations, we will update that and present it back out again.
I think that's the right way to go.
Okay.
Hold to the next regular
Yeah.
meeting
will
session.
be-
Let the public see it, redo it, let them see it.
And is this document out there for them to see?
It's been uploaded to board docs.
All right, good.
So it is the pleasure of the board then to go with our recommendations. We'll update our documents to reflect such.
I do have another question on that, and I'm fine with what you're thinking about doing there, for sure. So are students going to have the ability to do it virtual next year, or that's everybody's in person?
It has to be related to COVID. It can't just be because that's what they want. It has to be
Okay.
according to COVID. And we do have some other virtual formats for children who are taking a course that perhaps we don't offer, an AP course,
Right.
things like that. So you always have that, right?
Yep.
We're still trying to, each division is able to make kind of like to what extent we're going to offer that. Right now, we're looking at elementary is a lot harder to do remote. So we're not as supportive of having that option for the primary years. We feel like they need to be in person to have that. Again, we're looking at more case by case. We are looking at virtual junior or Ingenuity. We're looking at different providers who could provide that for us because we're not anticipating huge numbers, that it's going to be isolated cases, but we do want to provide something for them. So again, we're going to really push for the in-person learning experience as opposed to the other. But of course, with COVID reasonings, we will attend to it.
We're also exploring students, what options the school division has for students that elected to be fully virtual or remote this year. It didn't work out. They weren't successful.
Right.
So, whether or not we have to afford that same option to them next year.
Well, that was my question. If you didn't do well with it this year, you should not have the option to have it next year.
Well, a lot of school divisions and talk with other superintendents, I was informed that they are making criteria. They are looking at that. Like if you don't have internet access to be able to participate synchronously, if we do it synchronously or through another provider, then that we're allowing the child to be set up for failure. And
Exactly.
we can't do that.
Exactly.
So there will be some stipulations in place. They've got to have internet access and capabilities and it has to be working for them. Otherwise that option will be taken away.
Okay, very good.
And I do have a question in relation to severe weather. We could count it as a remote day, but what about kids who don't have access or whatever? They'll still have an opportunity to make up work when they come back.
So what we will be asking teachers to do is kind of like we did with our snow day packets. There's going to be some things that are put out there. So if we hit that day, they will have those resources with them.
Okay. Just like we would do before any of this ever came about.
Exactly.
We knew there was a possibility, here's
Send
your
something
work
home.
for the next day if we're not at school. Okay.
And if
Makes
it
sense.
catches us off guard, we all get a day off.
Yeah.
Because there is still some time that you can
Right.
call it what I would call a traditional
Sure.
snow day.
Yeah.
Where, and there's time available still in the calendar for that.
Okay.
Any other questions on the calendar?
Again, you can tell a lot of thought and process went into this, and you're to be commended. Thank you.
Well, I think the hour breakdown really helps.
Yeah.
And now that the public can have that, there shouldn't be any question if we're meeting the mark and following the law. So thank you for doing that breakdown.
The instructional team worked on that. It's a group effort.
Good deal.
We're moving on to action items, approval claims for payment. Ms. Sechrist?
Good evening, board members. You all have been provided with the claim certification where the operating fund is $165,919.95. Food service, $31,547.47. For total expenditures of $197,467.42. Along with that, you've been provided the list of claims as well as the check register. If you all have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
I had questions earlier, but I couldn't reach you, so I called Linda. I don't know if she shared that with you,
She
but
did, yes, sir.
she was able to answer those
Yes, sir.
questions for me,
Yes.
so I'm clear on my
Thank you, I'm
questions.
glad she was able.
Yeah.
Chairman, I move that we accept the claims for payment as presented.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Dr. Painter? Yes. Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Approval for purchase orders over $10,000. Ms. Sechrist?
Yes, board, we do have two purchase orders on the screen for your approval over 10,000. The Learning A to Z does use grant money to provide that. And then the NewsLaw is being provided by technology software. If you have any questions, we can do our best to answer those. Also, we do have an update on a purchase order that you all had approved last time for the vans using the CARES money. My understanding is that fell through and Mr. Moran has a better update on some vans that you would like to purchase.
The vehicles we're looking for are in high demand by everybody, it's not just school systems, it's sort of not just Picture County. And the time it took us to approve the purchase order last time for the 3 vans, they sold. And they moved on somewhere else. What we have now, Corey, who's been working diligently on this one with Bus Garage, has found 2 other vans on state contract. They're exactly the same as the 3 vans that we were looking for. So we'd like to pull the trigger on those 2 vans. We found a 3rd van, but that van is in a commercial contract is substantially more than the 2 vans on state contract for what we can purchase. So what we'd like to do is go ahead and pull the trigger tomorrow on 2 state contract vans. They're actually just about exactly the same price as the 3 last time. So
Are they under that amount?
yes,
Okay.
It's actually just a few $100s less.
So we've already approved that amount for.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, just want to give you an update, let you know that we're working on this, but 10-passenger vans are hard to come by right now. Actually, vehicles in general
You're right.
are hard to come by.
Well, that's been on the news.
Sure.
You can't rent a car
We're
if you're going on
looking,
vacation.
we're working with dealerships, we're working outside the state, we're looking everywhere. And God bless Corey, he's been keeping on. He's working hard. Okay, but we do have two that we think we can get tomorrow. We've prepared, one purchase order, we'll prepare the other one tomorrow morning, and hopefully have those two vans here in the very near future.
And both of them are under the amount that we've already approved, so.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the Nusala, or whatever this is
Newsletter.
that a grant as well?
No, that would be paid for out of technology software.
And out of tech, is this,
And we've been using it.
is this state and local, or state, local, federal funds?
I believe it's just our local fund.
Just out of local? Okay. You have a motion to approve the purchase orders over $10,000?
I make a motion that we approve purchase orders over $10,000.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the purchase orders over $10,000.
Mr. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
No.
Dr. Maynard. Yes. Mr. Gaylor.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Bruce.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, someone needs to get Ms. Pettit.
You wanna go on?
Sit in front of the microphone right there, please. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. How are you all? I have been called today to present the Perkins Plan for school year 21-22. Just to give you all a brief background in case anyone's unfamiliar with Perkins, the purpose of the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, more commonly known as Perkins 5, is to develop a more fully academic knowledge and technical skills of the secondary education students who elect to enroll in a career and technical education programs and programs of studies. The money is typically allocated for our school division. We'll get to the schedule here in just a moment, but these monies that are allocated to our school division each year are used to strengthen and assist, never meant to fully fund, but to strengthen and assist the programs at Page County Technical Center, both of our high schools and both of our middle schools, so across our CTE programs. Each year we have to develop a plan, and this plan goes through CTEM's schedule 1 all the way through schedule 17, and we based this year off of last year's allocations, which was $68,525.54. So as you look through the line items, it will be quite a bit of information about your plan of study, about what you do to support special populations. So I know that Mr. Benson I had shared the plan out with the central office, and then they had shared that plan with you all. So it's quite a bit to read through, but I'm sure that you've read through it by now. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those along the way. But what we've stopped on right now is in this local plan and budget template, one of the pages has our approved plans of study. Each year you have to have what I would call more of a program of focus or a plan of study. And this gives each year since 2007 what we have chosen. This year we have chosen business. So, I don't know how in-depth you all would like me to go with that, but one of the reasons business was chosen because you can see that it has not been a program focus since 2012-13 school year. And prior to COVID, lots of meetings that I'd had out in the community, we had several conversations with local business leaders that talked about the need for further training in business and even in IT. So that's why that was chosen this year. That does not mean that all the money or even a percentage of the money is spent towards business classes or preparation, but it does mean that I guess when, for lack of a better term, if push come to shove, they would get priority over the other programs. So I guess, Linda, as you can scroll through, you would go on down past that to when you would get to, it's a lot until you get down to Schedule 17. So if you scroll all the way down to 17, in Schedule 17, it will tell you, yeah, it's a lot of scrolling.
If that's on board docs, Schedule 17 and 18 is
Yeah.
not.
Oh, I'm
Not
sorry.
there.
So go back to 16. So go back up a second. No, go back up one more. So, but do you all have that in front of you? Do you have 17 and 18 in front of you?
That was in Mr. Benson's email that he sent out.
Yeah, it
and-
should have been in here because the whole template
And
when I.
I printed it
should have
out
been
just
here.
because I had concerned that I didn't see it at the end of this. So I knew
Right.
Mr. Benson sent it out, so I went back to his email. And just so the board knows, I did speak with Leanne today because I had a couple questions about the budget. And that's what's missing from here, Schedule 17 and 18, which is the budget. So I reached out to Leanne, just asked a couple of quick questions on the budget. And I mean, I can certainly ask them with you here, but mine was just for my own edification and clarification.
Yes, sir. So if anyone wants Mr. Moran to make copies, or if you want me to forward it to you, essentially when you get down to schedule, this is the end of 17. So you have to outline your budget. You have to break it down. What are you spending in the 3,000 line item? What are you spending in the 5,000? What is your plan for the 8,000 line? So we have to break out our plan that looks like this. That's what he has a copy of. So does anyone want Mr. Moran to go make a copy, or you feel that's necessary?
It's pretty straightforward.
It was an April 22nd email.
Yeah, and it's in an email if you're going back. I just had a question for Ms. Pettit on the line item for the amount or what's considered as capital outlay for furniture, technology, and such. So I just asked her what some things were that she was anticipating for that. So that's the only question that I had on her budget.
Each year we'll send out either at the end of like this school year for next year or even the beginning, we'll send out, I'll send out wish list requests to the all CT teachers at the middle high school and at the technical center. And they give feedback on what their program's needs are. So if you're interested in the outlay, I also complete, each year I complete like a spend down sheet. So it gives me reference to go back and to see, how much did we spend on technology? How much, like for instance, this year, and I'm so glad that we set aside in the 3,000 line, because in equipment, your 3,000 line basically would be a bit different because that would be our software and our licensing. And we needed that this year because we purchased ICEV, which was our online platform for our CTE courses at the beginning of this year. So when you see this and you look at the 8,000 line and it says 44,000 of 68,000, well, that is going to things such as a prefab barn for a page. We have bought that before. Health science mannequins that we have bought, convection ovens. I mean, you all know in your experience, I feel like you have to put a majority of it, as we discussed, in equipment, because that's where most of your spending is. So does that. I'll be glad to answer any questions. I know that you all had a chance to look over it, but if it's any further questions that I can go through and that you see, I'll be happy to answer those. I just know that it was supposed to be just a brief overview so you all could look at it and then you all could approve it for Mr. Breeden's signature. Does need to be on that along with Dr. Gonzalez's before we upload it into Omega. And
has to be there April 30th, correct?
April 30th, yes. So it has to be a substantially approvable form. And as we discussed this morning, I really would prefer that it is in its approvable form. I don't really like that it's supposed to be substantially approvable. So they really want you to have something on paper, whereas some divisions really don't, I guess, by April 30th have their whole plan in order. But if you all approve this and Mr. Breeden signs it and Dr. Gonzalez, it is basically our plan. I have nothing left to submit at that point for next year. And then generally in July, we get the new numbers for next year. Now, 2 years ago, it was 72,000. Based on some of our enrollment numbers, it can drop, it can go up. So we went from 72,000 to 68. That's not to say that in July, we wouldn't bump back up.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve Perkins Plan as presented.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the CTE Perkins Plan as presented.
Yes.
Dr. Keenan.
Yes.
Mr. Bugler.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Sue.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And can you have Miss Biller to come in? Miss Pettit? You wait one moment, you can have this paper name. Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you, Miss Pettit.
Yes, thank you.
For approval is SPAD annual plan for Miss Biller.
Good evening, board members. As a part of your packet, you should have the final version of the special education annual plan. And this evening, I'm just asking for your approval on that plan so we can submit it to the Department of Education by its due date.
And in your plan, you've got yellow highlights there. That's because of the 5% increase.
Right, so I did reflect that in the budgeted amounts. So if that 5% increase would not go through, then I would need to come back and amend the plan at that time.
And does that need our approval if you amended?
No, the amendments don't come back for approval.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. Anyone have any questions for Miss? Hearing no questions for Miss Biller, do we have a motion to approve the SPED annual plan as presented?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the SPED annual plan as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none.
Dr. Keenan.
Yes.
Mr. Bugler.
Yes.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Keenan.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Sue.
Yes.
Mr. Breeden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Biller. Next item up for approval is matters discussed in closed session. I have a motion.
Every long thing.
Yes, basically.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the items discussed in closed session pertaining to the discussion consideration or interviews of prospective. I'm not reading the right thing, am I? Is that right? No, it has to do with the, where is that? Let me back up. Let me find it.
Appointments.
Yeah, look at. section 2.2, 3711, is that it? Okay.
Mhm.
As it relates to matters discussed in closed session, section 2.2-3711A1, as it relates to appointments,
Resignations,
resignations,
retirements,
retirements,
transfers.
transfers, thank you, Dwayne. That's it.
Nutrition services pay rate.
Nutrition service and superintendent search?
Yep,
Okay.
Let's have a motion to have a second.
I'll second that one.
I struggled. Not,
Mr. Greenwood,
yes.
Mr. Langston,
Yes.
Mr. Panger,
Yes.
Dr. Panger,
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes. Okay, moving on to board discussion period.
I have two things. First, I'd like to congratulate the volleyball team at Luray High School for making it to state. Job well done and a great year. Also, to all the other sports, football, for those who made all district and state teams, along with,
Cross-country.
help me out here.
Cross-country.
Cross-country.
Yep.
And again, with everything that's going on, to be able to do that is phenomenal. I do have a question for Ms. Seegers. Back, I don't know, in the winter, the VSBA had a budget workshop, and there's one coming up again June 7th, maybe sometime. If you watched it back, and I thought it was done very well, is it necessary for us to look at it again, or is that more?
I think it's in May.
Is it?
I think it's gonna be
You're
in
right,
May.
it is in May.
Because I thought it was strange.
Yeah, I don't think that it would
Okay.
be necessary again, but I can double check on that.
Okay, well, like I said, I thought it was very well done last time, and if it's going to be the same information, I wasn't.
Right,
Right.
right.
I've got something. You done, Jackie?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to read an article by recent LHS graduate Alex White that was in the Page Valley News. It underscores the importance of fully funding our schools. I thought it was really spot on and worth sharing. In a recent meeting of the Page County Board of Supervisors, someone that I respect suggested that we should examine how much we are overfunding public schools. Overfunding, to be clear, we are likely underfunding our school system. Indeed, the Board of Supervisors has been reluctant to allow local schools to keep rollover funds that they have saved on behalf of taxpayers in the middle of a pandemic, no less. Things are especially rough here in rural Virginia, where localities like ours routinely struggle to support schools as a result of an unfair funding system that is built into the state constitution. Thanks to that, counties like Page must be deliberate about funding schools. Education is the single most important function of our county government, and it is a necessary condition for achieving long-term goals like job growth, higher population, and economic development. Supporting our schools is an essential investment in local development. Whether you are an official attracting new companies or a realtor attracting new people, one thing rings true. The quality of local public schools is a key deciding factor for anyone who is moving to a new county. Furthermore, schools also mean investing in the single largest employer in our county. You read that right. The public school system is the county's #1 employer, and it employs hundreds of people from all over Page County in the important work of educating our kids. Everyone wants to talk about economic development. Funding our schools is the perfect opportunity for them to put their money where their mouth is and invest in our local economy. Investing in education also translates into lower levels of criminality, which could mean significant savings at a time when we are considering a new multi-million-dollar jail. Fiscal responsibility means saving money and investing in what matters. I happen to believe that our kids matter. They're worth the investment. Thanks.
Any other members have anything?
Well, I have a couple comments about that. I think
the meeting the other day was, I would consider it disappointing the way it went. I understand people do not want to pay more taxes. I understand that totally. We're a county that prides ourselves on tourism, but tourism will not get us the revenue we need. It's just not going to happen. But with that said, I think we should be prepared based on that vote that we're not going to get the budget we presented. And I hope that you guys are really working through some plans on what that means and how that works. Teacher pay needs to be addressed. I think in our session, we got some folks coming back into our county. And that says a lot, you know. But at the same time, we need to be able to keep folks so we don't have this transition and loss of a program. I mean, once you have a program like the AGS that we have with 2 openings, you've built it, you built it, you built it. Now someone leaves, you lose that engagement, right? So we need to start looking at how we're going to do that. And I think we need to start looking at how we're going to have guarantees from the Board of Supervisors when it comes to these funds. It sounded like they were going to backtrack a little bit, but they did not. They're going to move forward with some things. But not only for capital improvement plans, but we need to be looking at, if we have carryover, how does it get back to the teachers in some ways? That's the big thing for me is just the budget. I'm very concerned about it. I know you guys are probably working on it and going to be ready for us on that, but it wasn't a positive meeting when it came to that. But I appreciate the tax issue as well. And I will say that I think Page County High School on a different subject did a great job with the visit from Mrs. Northam. And she was very engaging and is very personable in some ways with singing happy birthday to a young man that was there. And I appreciated her coming. And I think Mr. Kale and them did a great job hosting that. And we were ready for it and it was great. And I think I'm glad to see that TR is now throwing from the mound a little bit, which is good news to see that he continues to recover. But we have concerns, but we also have many blessings as well.
Anyone else? I just want to also remind the board about this collective bargaining in the state of Virginia. That is an option, and the board does need to take perhaps an action on it, and it is up to the board of how we choose to move forward on it. So it is either you can adopt something, not adopt something, or be forced to. So just sort of research that, find out information for yourself. I know there was a VSBA thing that was on that, if you attended that, because I think it's already passed, hasn't it?
Yes.
So it is going to be a thing in the state of Virginia. Some may argue that it's a good thing. Some will argue that it's not. So just be advised that that is coming.
Well, the board has to decide whether or not they're going to act on it or not. I did attend that session.
Yeah.
And it's very clear that the board just has to decide one way or the other. You don't have to, but you have to decide.
Right.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, may I remind the board that on May 5th, we have a budget work session. I know it's in between our meeting schedule. I just don't want that to slip people's calendars. On May 5th, we have a budget work session at 5 o'clock.
And Mr. Painter will definitely have some scenarios laid out of options based on what we received on the 4th from the Board of Supervisors for you all to discuss and make your decisions with. We are absolutely looking at lots of different avenues.
Right, we'll have a couple situations and we'll have to decide.
What time?
And the time on that's 5 o'clock?
The 5th, yes, sir.
And May the 5th?
At Monday the 5th at 5.
At 5. Question, because that wasn't on the regular school board calendar, because I've looked.
It was on the budget calendar.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's another one.
Yeah,
Okay.
the other one you all approved.
Okay, so I have to go back and look at that one.
Yeah.
So that was the 5th, because when I was devising the superintendent search calendar, I was very mindful of what dates had it.
Right, sorry, that was on another calendar.
So that's on another
Yeah, it's
calendar.
on the budget calendar.
Oh, Lord. Does any of the dates that's on the superintendent search calendar,
That's our last date on the budget
Yeah, that's
calendar,
not-
so that's,
Yeah, I looked at that. That was,
yeah, that's
Okay.
after we.
May 5th, I can't be here.
Okay.
okay.
Celebrating Cinco de Mayo.
I don't know what I'm gonna celebrate. Not being here probably.
Okay. All right, any other board members have any, or the staff have anything? You,
No, we're good.
you're done? Okay. I need a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and second to adjourn.
Mr. Lansbury.
Yes.
Mr. Kramer.
Yes.
Dr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Yes, we're adjourned.